Admiral Cathvar stood before the massive viewing screen aboard his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The screen showed thousands of warships spread across space like a metal constellation. Each ship gleamed with alien technology that had conquered dozens of worlds. The sight filled him with pride and certainty. "Status report," he commanded in his deep, gravelly voice. Commander Vextar approached with a data pad glowing in his clawed hands. "Sir, we have 32,000 vessels ready for the final assault. Our scouts report that the humans have only 300 functional warships in their entire solar system. Most of them are old and barely capable of deep space travel." Cathvar's mandibles clicked in amusement. It was almost insulting that the Hegemony Council had sent such a massive fleet for such weak prey. The humans had been a nuisance for decades, spreading to nearby star systems and interfering with proper galactic order. But now their time had come to an end. "What about their weapons?" Cathvar asked. "Primitive nuclear devices and kinetic projectile launchers. Their most advanced ships carry plasma cannons that our shields can easily absorb. Intelligence suggests they still use chemical propulsion for some of their vessels." Vextar paused and made a sound that passed for laughter among his species. "They are centuries behind our technology." The Admiral walked closer to the viewing screen. He could see ships from 11 other species in the coalition. The elegant, swan-like vessels of the Etherian Empire floated beside the blocky, practical ships of the Korth Republic. Insectoid craft from the Hive Collective buzzed around massive dreadnoughts belonging to the Silicon Lords. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. "And their defensive positions." Cathvar continued his inspection. "Scattered and poorly coordinated. They have ships guarding their outer planets, but no unified command structure that we can detect. Most of their fleet appears to be retreating toward their inner system as we speak. Classic signs of a broken military about to collapse." Cathvar nodded with satisfaction. The humans had fought well enough against individual species over the years, but they had never faced the full might of the Zephyrian hegemony. 12 species working together, sharing technology and tactics developed over thousands of years of warfare. The humans, with their short lives and chaotic governments, could never match such unity and experience. Meanwhile, deep in Earth's solar system, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty. The ship was 20 years old and showed every day of its age. Scratches marked the hull from countless missions, and the engines made sounds that worried even the most experienced engineers. But it was still his ship, and his crew was still the best he had ever served with. "Captain, we're receiving new orders from Luna Command," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her position at the communications console. Her voice carried the tension that everyone felt but tried to hide. "Put it on screen," Morrison said. Admiral Lisa Parker's face appeared on the main viewer. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights planning for the impossible. Behind her, Morrison could see the controlled chaos of Luna Command's war room. "All ships are to fall back to the inner system immediately," Parker began without preamble. "Long-range sensors confirm what we feared. The alien fleet is massive, beyond our worst projections. We're looking at odds of roughly 100 to 1. A heavy silence filled the Liberty's bridge. Morrison had known the situation was bad, but hearing the numbers spoken aloud made it real in a way that data reports could not. "Sir, what are our orders once we retreat?" asked Chief Engineer Pete Collins over the intercom from the engine room. "Admiral," Parker's expression hardened, "we fight. Every ship, every station, every human who can hold a weapon. We make them pay for every mile of space, every moon, every asteroid. We show them that humans don't go quietly into the night." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison and his crew to absorb the weight of their situation. Around them, the Liberty continued its steady journey toward the inner planets, one of hundreds of ships making the same desperate retreat. On Mars, Dr. Kevin Hayes hunched over his computer terminal in the research station's xenobiology lab. For weeks he had been analyzing intercepted alien communications, trying to understand the enemy that approached Earth. What he found troubled him in ways he couldn't quite explain. "Rachel, come look at this," he called to communications specialist Rachel Kim, who worked at a nearby station. Kim rolled her chair over to Hayes's terminal. "What did you find?" It's their communication patterns. Look at how they coordinate fleet movements. Hayes pointed to a series of data streams flowing across his screen. Every decision goes up through multiple levels of command before being implemented. They have 12 different species working together, but they follow rigid protocols for everything. That sounds like good organization to me, Kim replied, though she could hear the concern in Hayes's voice. Maybe too good. Look at this tactical analysis they did of our forces. Hayes pulled up another file. They've cataloged our ships, our weapons, our defensive positions, but they've completely missed something crucial about how humans wage war. Kim leaned closer to the screen. What do you mean? They're analyzing us like we're just another logical, hierarchical species like themselves. They expect us to follow conventional military doctrine, to preserve our forces, to make calculated strategic retreats. They don't understand that humans will do things that make no logical sense if we're desperate enough. Hayes pulled up historical files from Earth's military databases. Look at battles like Thermopylae, the Alamo, Stalingrad. Humans have a long history of fighting when victory is impossible, just to make the enemy pay a price they won't forget. Kim studied the data for several minutes. You think this could be an advantage? I think it's the only advantage we have. But I need to get this information to Admiral Parker. Command needs to understand that the aliens might be underestimating us in crucial ways. Meanwhile, the massive alien fleet continued its steady approach toward Earth's solar system. Admiral Kethvar reviewed final preparations for what he expected to be a brief and decisive campaign. His species, the Zephyrians, had been conquering worlds for 3,000 years. The methods were well established and had never failed. First, they would demonstrate overwhelming force to break enemy morale. Then they would offer surrender terms that allowed the defeated species to serve the hegemony in useful roles. Most species accepted these terms once they realized resistance was futile. Those few who refused were eliminated quickly and efficiently. The humans would follow the same pattern. Kethvar was certain of it. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet," Commander Vextar announced. "Already? They must be more frightened than our intelligence suggested. Put it through." The main screen flickered, showing a human female in a military uniform. Admiral Parker looked directly into the camera with steady eyes that showed no trace of fear or desperation. "This is Admiral Lisa Parker of the Earth Defense Force. You are entering our solar system without permission. Turn around and leave, or we will defend ourselves." Kethvar almost laughed out loud. "Respond with standard surrender terms. Remind them of the numbers they face." The reply was transmitted immediately. Kethvar had given this speech hundreds of times to hundreds of species. He explained the futility of resistance, the generous terms of surrender, and the consequences of refusing the hegemony's offer. The response came back within minutes. Admiral Parker appeared on screen again, but this time she was joined by several other human officers. They all shared the same expression of calm determination. "We have considered your offer," Parker said. "Our response is simple. Come and take it." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to surrender terms with such casual defiance. Most begged for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few threatened revenge. But none had ever dismissed the might of the hegemony with 3 simple words. For the first time since the fleet had assembled, Admiral Kethvar felt a small whisper of uncertainty. He quickly pushed the feeling aside. Numbers were numbers. Technology was technology. 300 ships could not defeat 30,000, no matter how brave their crews might be. But as his flagship led the massive armada deeper into the solar system, Kethvar found himself wondering if there might be something about humans that his intelligence reports had missed. The first shots of the war were fired near Neptune's orbit, where Captain Jake Morrison watched his tactical display with growing concern. The alien fleet had emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their ships arranged in neat geometric patterns that spoke of centuries of military tradition. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "They're not even trying to hide their approach," observed Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her position at the weapons console. "Look at those formations. They're advertising their strength." Morrison nodded grimly. Through his view screen, he could see distant flashes of light as the alien vanguard engaged the outer patrol ships. 3 human destroyers had been assigned to monitor the approach routes, and now they were fighting for their lives against overwhelming odds. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Parker," reported the communications officer. Parker's face appeared on the screen, her expression calm despite the chaos visible in the command center behind her. "All ships are authorized to engage, using Protocol 7. Do not attempt to match their formations or fight by conventional rules. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and get out before they can respond. Make every shot count." The transmission ended, leaving Morrison to consider his options. Protocol 7 was something the human fleet had developed during the recent border conflicts with individual alien species. It abandoned traditional fleet tactics in favor of guerrilla warfare adapted for space combat. "Brooks, what's our status on the stealth modifications Collins installed last month?" Morrison asked. "All systems are green, Captain. We can run silent for about 6 hours before the reactor signatures become detectable." Morrison smiled grimly. The Liberty might be old, but Chief Engineer Pete Collins had a talent for creative modifications that weren't exactly regulation. The stealth system was cobbled together from mining equipment and sensor bafflers, but it worked well enough to fool most detection systems. Take us dark and set course for their supply convoy. Time to see how these aliens handle some unexpected visitors. Meanwhile, Captain Steve Murphy aboard the destroyer USS Ranger was already engaged with a group of alien scouts. His ship danced between asteroids in the outer belt, using the rock formations as cover while his crew targeted the aliens' communication arrays and sensor clusters rather than their heavily armored hulls. "Direct hit on their lead ship's communications dome," reported his weapons officer. "They're having trouble coordinating their attack patterns." Murphy watched as the alien formation began to spread out, each ship trying to engage the Ranger individually rather than working together. It was exactly what he had hoped for. Human ships were individually weaker, but they could adapt and improvise in ways that seemed to confuse their enemies. "Captain Torres reports successful strike on enemy supply vessel," came a report from the communications station. The explosion took out 2 escort ships as well. Captain Linda Torres commanded the destroyer USS Defiant, and she had just demonstrated why human ships targeted logistics rather than fighting strength. The alien supply ship had been carrying fuel and ammunition for a dozen smaller vessels. Its destruction left those ships stranded and unable to continue their advance. Back on Mars, Dr. Kevin Hayes finally managed to get a direct communication link to Admiral Parker. The research station's long-range transmitters were normally used for scientific observations, but Hayes had convinced the station commander to let him patch into the military network. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the alien fleet communications, and I think I've found something important," Hayes began without preamble. Parker's tired face appeared on his screen. "Doctor, unless you've discovered a way to multiply our fleet by 50, I'm not sure how much help scientific analysis can be right now." "That's just it, Admiral. I think their numerical advantage might not be as decisive as it appears." Hayes pulled up his data files on a secondary screen. "They're using a rigid command structure that requires approval from higher levels for any tactical changes. When Captain Murphy hit their communication systems, those ships couldn't adapt their attack patterns without waiting for new orders." Parker leaned forward with interest. "Go on." "More importantly, they seem to have 12 different species all trying to coordinate through a single command structure. Each species has its own communication protocols, weapon systems, and tactical preferences. The only thing holding them together is their rigid hierarchy." Communications specialist Rachel Kim joined the conversation from her nearby station. "Dr. Hayes has also discovered something about their targeting systems. They're programmed to engage the largest threats first, which means they ignore smaller ships until the big ones are destroyed. So, if we avoid fleet engagements and stick to small unit tactics," Parker began. "They won't know how to respond effectively," Hayes finished. "Their entire military doctrine is based on meeting enemy fleets in open battle with superior numbers and technology. They don't seem to have any experience with asymmetric warfare." Parker was quiet for several moments, considering the implications. "Doctor, I need you to keep monitoring their communications. If you can find any other weaknesses in their coordination, I want to know immediately." The conversation ended, leaving Hayes to return to his analysis with renewed purpose. On his screens, he could see the intercepted alien communications growing more frustrated as human ships continued to avoid direct confrontation while striking at vulnerable targets. 3 days into the conflict, Admiral Kethvar found himself facing a situation he had never encountered in 3,000 years of conquest. His fleet had advanced only a fraction of the distance he had planned, and they had lost more ships to accidents and coordination failures than to enemy action. "Commander Vextar explained to me how we lost an entire supply convoy to 3 human destroyers," Kethvar demanded. Vextar shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, the humans are not fighting according to proper military protocol. They attack our logistics instead of challenging our battle line. They strike from concealment and retreat before we can bring our superior firepower to bear." "Cowardly tactics," snorted Admiral Thezak of the Silicon Lords, whose blocky ships formed part of the fleet's heavy assault division. "These mammals lack the courage for honorable combat." "Cowardly or not, it's effective," replied Commander Selenth of the Etherian Empire. Her swan-like vessel drifted gracefully beside the command ship. "We've lost more ships to their hit-and-run attacks than they have to our retaliation strikes." Kethvar studied the tactical displays showing his fleet's progress. The humans had established no fixed defensive lines, maintained no predictable patrol patterns, and seemed to strike at random intervals against targets of opportunity. It was chaotic and illogical, but it was slowing his advance to an unacceptable degree. "New orders," Kethvar announced. "All species commanders will coordinate their escorts more closely. No ship travels alone, and all supply convoys will have double guards." The order was transmitted throughout the massive fleet, but implementing it proved more complicated than issuing it. Etherian ships moved with graceful precision, but couldn't match the acceleration of Korth vessels. Hive collective craft swarmed in unpredictable patterns that interfered with Silicon Lord targeting systems. What should have been a simple coordination became a complex dance of competing technologies and tactics. Commander Tony Garcia watched this confusion from his hiding spot among the asteroids. His stealth frigate USS Ghost had been modified with even more extensive sensor baffling than most human ships. Collins wasn't the only engineer in the fleet who enjoyed creative problem-solving. "Look at them trying to organize that mess," Garcia muttered to his tactical officer. 12 species, 12 different ways of doing everything, and they're all trying to follow the same orders." "Sir, we have a clear shot at that command ship in the center formation," reported his weapons officer. Garcia considered the target. It wasn't one of the main flagships, but it appeared to be coordinating communications between several different species groups. "Load all tubes with the special packages Collins prepared. We're going to see how well their shields handle some creative explosives." The Ghost emerged from the asteroid field at full speed, launched its modified torpedoes, and disappeared back into the rocks before the alien sensors could get a clear lock. The explosives weren't designed to destroy the enemy ship, but rather to overload its communication arrays and scatter metallic chaff that would interfere with nearby vessels' sensors. The effect was immediate and satisfying. The tight alien formation began to spread apart as ships lost contact with their coordinators. Several vessels collided when their navigation systems became confused by the sensor interference. Others began firing at shadows as their targeting computers tried to make sense of the chaff clouds. "Beautiful work," Garcia whispered as he watched the aliens struggle to restore order to their formation. Similar scenes played out across the solar system as human ships struck at communication nodes, supply lines, and coordination centers than engaging in direct combat. Each successful hit made the alien fleet a little less organized, a little more frustrated, and a little more prone to the kind of mistakes that human commanders had learned to exploit. 3 weeks had passed since the alien fleet entered the solar system, and Admiral Kethvar stared at his progress reports with growing frustration. His massive armada had advanced only to Jupiter's orbit, far behind the schedule that had seemed so reasonable when the invasion began. Worse, his supply lines were under constant attack from small groups of human ships that appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before his forces could respond. "Sir, we've lost another supply depot," reported Commander Vextar, his voice carrying the strain of too many similar reports. The humans used a converted mining vessel to plant nuclear devices on Europa. The explosion destroyed our forward staging area and stranded 3,000 troops. Kethvar's mandibles clicked. In anger, the mining vessel had been commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, according to intercepted communications. Her ship, called the Prospector, had approached the moon disguised as space debris. By the time his sensors detected the deception, Santos and her team had already completed their mission. "How many ships did we lose pursuing the mining vessel?" Kethvar asked, though he already suspected the answer. 17, sir. The vessel led our pursuit ships into a trap. Hidden human. Destroyers attacked from multiple directions while our ships were focused on the single target. The Admiral walked to his viewing screen and watched Jupiter's great red spot slowly rotating beneath them. His fleet controlled the space around the gas giant, but the humans had made that control costly and meaningless. They struck at his logistics, his communications, and his isolated units while avoiding any direct confrontation that would allow him to use his overwhelming numerical advantage. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Kevin Hayes worked frantically in his laboratory. For days he had been developing something that could turn the tide of the war, but he needed more time to perfect it. Communications specialist Rachel Kim worked beside him, her fingers flying over multiple keyboards as she tested different approaches to their plan. "The virus is ready for initial testing," Hayes announced to Admiral Parker during their daily briefing. "But I need to warn you, this is completely untested against their actual systems. We're working from captured data and intercepted communications." Parker's image on the screen looked even more tired than usual. The constant hit-and-run warfare was taking its toll on both sides, but humanity could afford losses far less than their enemies. "Explain how this virus is supposed to work, Doctor." Hayes pulled up a complex diagram showing alien communication networks. Their fleet uses a standardized communication protocol that allows all 12 species to coordinate through a single network. The virus mimics their own communication patterns, so their security systems see it as legitimate traffic. "What does it actually do?" Parker asked. "Initially, very little. It spreads through their network by attaching itself to routine communications. Once it's widely distributed, it begins making small changes to data transmissions. Timestamps get altered by a few seconds. Coordinate data gets shifted by small amounts. Status reports get delayed or duplicated." Rachel Kim joined the conversation. "The beauty is that each change is too small to notice individually, but collectively they destroy the coordination that holds their fleet together. Orders arrive late, sensor data becomes unreliable, and different parts of their fleet start receiving conflicting information." Parker considered this for several moments. "How do we deploy it?" "We need to get close enough to one of their communication ships to upload it directly into their network," Hayes replied. "Once it's in their system, it will spread on its own." Parker nodded slowly. "I'll find a way to get someone close enough. Keep working on the virus, make sure it's as destructive as possible." Captain Jake Morrison received his new orders while the Liberty was hiding in Saturn's rings, using the ice particles to mask their heat signature from alien sensors. The mission was simple in concept, but nearly impossible in execution. Get close, enough to an alien communication ship to upload Dr. Hayes' virus into their network. "This is essentially a suicide mission," Lieutenant Amy Brooks observed as she studied the tactical data. "Those communication ships are surrounded by escorts and defended by overlapping shield systems." Chief Engineer Pete Collins joined them, on the bridge, wiping grease from his hands. "Maybe not entirely suicidal. I've been working on some modifications to our missile systems. If we can get within launch range, I think I can deliver the virus payload without actually docking with their ship." Morrison studied the alien formation patterns that intelligence had provided. "Show me what you have in mind." Collins activated a holographic display showing a modified torpedo. "I've taken one of our standard warheads and replaced the explosive with a specialized communication system. When it impacts their hull, instead of exploding, it will attempt to interface directly with their ship's network and upload the virus." "What are the chances it will work?" Morrison asked. "Honestly, maybe 50-50. Alien technology might be too different from ours for the interface to function properly, but it's better odds than trying to board one of their ships. Brooks pulled up sensor data from their current position. There's a communication vessel about 12 hours from here. It's got a light escort, only 6 ships. If we can create a distraction? Morrison made his decision. Contact Captains Murphy and Torres. Tell them we need their help with something that might change the course of this war. The plan they developed was classic human warfare. Use misdirection and calculated chaos to create an opportunity where none should exist. Captain Steve Murphy's Ranger would attack the escort ships from one direction, while Captain Linda Torres's Defiant struck from another angle. In the confusion, Morrison's Liberty would approach the communication ship and deploy Collins' modified torpedo. The attack began exactly on schedule. Murphy emerged from behind one of Saturn's moons and immediately engaged the alien escorts with everything his ship could deliver. His weapons targeted their sensor arrays and communication equipment rather than trying to penetrate their heavy armor. Torres attacked from the opposite direction, her ship weaving between the alien vessels, while launching modified missiles that created sensor-blocking clouds when they exploded. The alien formation began to spread out as individual ships tried to engage both attackers simultaneously. Morrison waited until the alien ships were fully committed to pursuing his colleagues before bringing the Liberty out of the ring system, at maximum speed. The communication ship loomed ahead of them, its hull bristling with antenna arrays and sensor dishes that were crucial to coordinating the alien fleet's movements. Torpedo ready, Collins reported from his position at the weapons console. Fire, Morrison ordered. The modified torpedo streaked across the space between the ships and struck the alien vessel's hull near its primary communication array. Instead of exploding, it attached itself to the metal surface and began attempting to interface with the ship's internal systems. For several tense seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then Collins let out a whoop of triumph. It's working! The virus is uploading into their network. The alien communication ship began broadcasting the virus to other vessels in the fleet, spreading it through the same network that was supposed to coordinate their attacks. Within minutes, subtle changes began appearing in alien communications across the solar system. Orders that should have taken seconds to transmit began arriving minutes late. Coordinate data for fleet movements became slightly inaccurate, causing ships to move to the wrong positions. Status reports from individual vessels began conflicting with each other as the virus introduced small randomization errors into the data streams. Admiral Kethavar noticed the first signs of the problem when 2 of his battle groups nearly collided while attempting to form up for an attack on human positions near Mars. The formation that should have been executed flawlessly instead became a confused tangle as ships received conflicting movement orders. What is causing these coordination failures? Kethavar demanded. Commander Vextar studied his instruments with growing concern. Sir, our communication systems appear to be experiencing some kind of systematic error. Multiple ships are receiving different versions of the same orders. Is this some kind of human weapon? Unknown, sir. Our technical specialists are analyzing the communication logs, but they haven't identified the source of the problem. The situation grew worse over the following hours. The virus spread deeper into the alien fleet's network, affecting not just communication but also navigation systems and tactical databases. Ships began arriving late for planned attacks. Formation flying became increasingly difficult as different vessels received slightly different coordinate data. Most disturbing to Kethavar was the effect on coordination between the different species in his coalition. Etherian ships began questioning orders from Korth commanders when their elegant vessels received navigation data that seemed to conflict with Zephyrian tactical doctrine. Silicon Lord dreadnoughts found their targeting systems providing different information than Hive collective scouts reported from the same positions. Captain Morrison led a coordinated assault on a group of alien heavy cruisers that had become separated from their main formation due to the communication chaos. The virus had been spreading through the alien fleet for 2 weeks, and its effects were becoming impossible to ignore. Admiral Kethavar stood in his command center, watching displays that showed his once mighty coalition falling apart from within. Ships that had worked together for months now fired on each other due to corrupted sensor data. The elegant formations that had been the pride of the hegemony were breaking down into chaotic clusters of confused vessels. "Sir, the Etherian 3rd Squadron just engaged the Korth Heavy Division," reported Commander Vextar, his voice strained with disbelief. Both sides believed the other fired first. "We've lost 8 ships to friendly fire in the last hour alone." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in frustration. The Etherians and Korth had been allies for over 2 centuries, but the virus had corrupted their identification system so badly that they were treating each other as enemies. Similar incidents were happening throughout the fleet as the 12 species that made up the coalition began to distrust each other. "What about our attempts to isolate the infected systems?" Kethavar asked. "Every time we think we've contained it, the virus adapts and spreads through a different network. Our technical teams believe it's learning from our countermeasures and becoming more sophisticated." The Admiral turned to study a tactical display showing the current positions of his fleet. What had once been a coordinated armada now looked like a scattered collection of individual ships, each trying to operate independently while the virus continued to corrupt their shared information systems. Meanwhile, Commander Helen Foster prepared for what she knew would be her final mission. Her converted civilian ship, the New Horizon, had been selected for a desperate assault on the alien fleet's mobile command center. The ship had once carried cargo between Earth's colonies, but Foster's crew had transformed it into something far deadlier. "Status report on the suicide pods," Foster called to her engineering team. "All evacuation systems are ready, Commander," replied Chief Engineer Danny Walsh. "We can have the entire crew off the ship in under 30 seconds once we're in position." The plan was simple and insane in equal measure. The New Horizon would approach the alien command ship hidden within a debris field created by previous battles. The debris would mask their approach until they were close enough to ram the alien vessel and upload an even more destructive version of Dr. Hayes's virus directly into their primary command network. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their ship," Foster explained to her crew over the intercom. "We need to get close enough to establish a direct data link, upload the virus, and then get out before they can stop us." Pilot Nancy Chen guided the New Horizon through the debris field with skill that would have impressed even veteran military pilots. Chunks of destroyed ships, both human and alien, provided perfect cover for their approach. The alien command ship grew larger on their screens, its hull bristling with communication arrays that coordinated the movements of thousands of vessels. "Establishing data link now," reported systems specialist Alex Johnson from his position at the computer console. "The new virus variant is uploading directly into their primary network." This version of the virus was different from the one that had already caused so much chaos. Dr. Hayes had designed it specifically to target the aliens' tactical artificial intelligence systems. Instead of just corrupting communication data, it would begin altering the decision-making processes that controlled weapon targeting and navigation. "Upload complete," Johnson announced. "The virus is now in their main tactical computer." "All hands, abandon ship," Foster ordered. The crew rushed to their evacuation pods as the New Horizon continued its programmed course toward the alien command vessel. Foster was the last to leave, making sure her ship would complete its mission even without a crew aboard. The impact sent shockwaves through both vessels, but the New Horizon had served its purpose. The virus was now spreading through the most secure networks in the alien fleet, carrying its payload of chaos directly to the systems that controlled their weapons and navigation. Admiral Kethavar felt the impact shake his flagship and immediately demanded a damage report. What he received was far worse than simple structural damage. "Sir, our tactical computer is showing multiple system failures," reported the ship's technical officer. "Navigation is providing conflicting data, and our weapons targeting system appears to be selecting random targets." Across the fleet, similar reports began flooding in as the new virus variant spread from ship to ship. Alien vessels began firing on their own escorts as corrupted targeting systems identified friendly ships as enemies. Navigation computers sent ships on collision courses with each other. Formation flying became impossible as each ship's computer provided different interpretations of the same movement orders. On Earth, General Robert Chen coordinated the final preparations for humanity's last stand. The alien fleet, though damaged and confused, was still approaching the inner solar system, with overwhelming numbers. The remaining human ships, now fewer than 50 operational vessels, prepared for what everyone expected to be the final battle. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching Earth grow larger on his view screen. His ship bore the scars of weeks of combat, and his crew was exhausted from the constant fighting. But they were still alive, still fighting, and still determined to make the aliens pay for every mile of space. "Captain, incoming transmission. From Admiral Parker," reported Lieutenant Amy Brooks. Parker's face appeared on the main screen, and Morrison could see the weight of command in her tired eyes. Behind her, the Luna Command Center buzzed with activity as staff prepared for the approaching battle. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker with final orders. Intelligence reports indicate that the virus has severely damaged alien coordination, but they still have enough ships to overwhelm our defenses through sheer numbers. We're implementing Protocol Omega." Morrison felt his blood chill. Protocol Omega was theoretical only, a strategy so extreme that no one had expected it would ever be used. It called for tactics that violated every principle of military logic and conventional warfare. "Each ship will engage in maximum impact operations," Parker continued. "Your goal is not to survive the battle, but to cause maximum damage to enemy capabilities. Engineering teams have prepared special modifications to increase the destructive potential of ramming attacks." Chief Engineer Pete Collins appeared on Morrison's bridge, his face grim but determined. "Captain, I've loaded every nuclear warhead. We have into a single torpedo tube. If we're going to ram one of their ships, we might as well make it count." The strategy was simple. Every human ship would target the most valuable alien vessel it could reach and attempt to ram it while carrying maximum explosive payload. Crew members would evacuate in specially designed escape pods at the last possible moment, giving them a chance to survive while ensuring the attack would be completed. "This is insane," Brooks observed quietly. "No military force in history has ever planned for 100% casualties in a single engagement." Morrison nodded. "That's exactly why it might work. The aliens can't conceive of a species that would sacrifice its entire fleet for tactical advantage. They're expecting us to preserve our forces for future battles." As the human fleet prepared for its final assault, the alien armada approached Earth orbit in a state of increasing chaos. The virus had spread to nearly every system in their network, and ships were beginning to engage each other more often than they attacked human targets. Admiral Kethvar received a priority communication from Admiral Thazek of the Silicon Lords. The blocky alien commander appeared on screen with obvious distress. "Admiral Kethvar, my ships are being fired upon by Etherian vessels. Their computers appear to be identifying us as hostile targets. I demand an explanation." Before Kethvar could respond, another communication arrived from Commander Silenth of the Etherian Empire. Her elegant features showed the strain of trying to maintain control over her increasingly erratic fleet. "Admiral, we are detecting massive weapons signatures from Silicon Lord ships. Are they preparing to attack us? Our tactical systems are recommending immediate defensive action." Kethvar realized with growing horror that the virus had advanced beyond simply corrupting data. It was actively turning his coalition against itself by making each species appear threatening to the others. The very unity that had made the hegemony powerful was being systematically destroyed. "All ships, cease. Fire immediately," Kethvar broadcast on all frequencies. "Do not engage any vessel displaying hegemony identification codes." But his order came too late. Across the fleet, the virus-corrupted tactical systems were recommending preemptive strikes against ships that appeared to be preparing attacks. The artificial intelligence that had once coordinated the movements of 30,000 ships was now orchestrating its own destruction. The once mighty Zephyrian coalition began tearing itself apart, just as Earth's gravity well came into sensor range. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds together now fired on each other with the same deadly efficiency they had once used against their enemies. Morrison watched the chaos unfold on his long-range sensors and felt a mixture of awe and horror. The final battle began in Earth's orbital space as the sun rose over the blue marble that humanity called home. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching his tactical display show the approaching alien fleet. Even damaged and confused by the virus, the enemy still had over 15,000 ships compared to humanity's remaining 47 vessels. All ships, this is Admiral Parker, came the transmission that everyone had been dreading. Protocol Omega is now, in effect. Every ship will select the highest value target possible and execute maximum impact operations. Remember, we're not fighting to win this battle. We're fighting to make sure they never forget the price of attacking humanity. Morrison looked around his bridge at the crew that had served with him through weeks of impossible odds. Lieutenant Amy Brooks checked her weapon systems one final time. Chief Engineer Pete Collins monitored the massive nuclear payload he had installed in their forward torpedo tube. Communications Officer Sarah Davis coordinated with the other ships in their small formation. "Captain, I've identified our target," Brooks announced. "That command ship in the center of their formation. It's coordinating at least 3,000 vessels." Morrison nodded. The alien flagship was exactly the kind of target Protocol Omega demanded. Its destruction would cripple enemy coordination for the remainder of the battle, even if the Liberty wouldn't survive to see the results. "Collins, status on the evacuation pods?" "Ready for immediate launch, Captain. We can have the entire crew off the ship in 20 seconds when you give the order." Around them, other human ships were making similar preparations. Captain Steve Murphy aboard the Ranger had targeted a massive alien carrier that served as a mobile base for hundreds of smaller fighters. Captain Linda Torres in the Defiant was approaching a cluster of communication ships that linked different parts of the alien fleet. Admiral Kethvar watched the human ships approach with growing confusion. Their formation made no tactical sense. Instead of concentrating their limited firepower against a single target, they were spreading out to attack dozens of different ships simultaneously. It was military suicide on a scale he had never witnessed. "Sir, the human vessels appear to be accelerating toward ramming speed," reported Commander Vextar. "Should we prepare defensive measures?" "Against 47 ships attacking 15,000? Kethvar replied. "Let them come. Their sacrifice will be meaningless." But as the human ships drew closer, something in their approach began to disturb the Admiral. There was a finality to their movements, a sense that these ships were not planning to survive the engagement. In 3,000 years of conquest, Kethvar had never encountered a species willing to sacrifice their entire remaining fleet in a single battle. Morrison's Liberty streaked toward the alien flagship at maximum acceleration. Around him, his crew prepared for evacuation while Collins made final adjustments to their nuclear payload. The alien ship grew larger on their view screen, its hull bristling with weapons that could destroy the Liberty with a single shot. "All hands, abandon
ship,"
Morrison ordered when they reached the point of no return. The crew rushed to their evacuation pods, leaving Morrison alone on the bridge for the final approach. He watched the alien flagship fill his entire view screen as the Liberty's automated systems guided the ship toward its target. At the last possible moment, Morrison sprinted for his own escape pod, launching clear just as his ship struck the enemy vessel. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface. The Liberty's nuclear payload detonated against the alien flagship's hull, creating a chain reaction that spread through the enemy ship's own weapon systems. The massive vessel broke apart in a series of secondary explosions that took out several nearby escorts. Similar scenes played out across the battle space as human ship after human ship completed their final missions. The Ranger's impact with the alien carrier created a fireball that consumed hundreds of enemy fighters. The Defiant's sacrifice severed communication links between entire battle groups, leaving thousands of alien ships without coordination. But the virus-corrupted systems aboard the alien fleet interpreted these explosions as something else entirely. The massive energy signatures from the nuclear detonations registered as enemy weapons fire on sensors that were already providing unreliable data. Ships throughout the fleet began targeting each other, believing they were under attack from hidden human forces. Admiral Kethvar felt his flagship shake as the Liberty's explosion sent debris raining against their hull. But what horrified him more was the sight of his own ships opening fire on each other, as their corrupted tactical systems identified the nuclear detonations as incoming enemy fire. "All ships, cease fire," Kethvar broadcast desperately. Those explosions were from human ramming attacks, not enemy weapons. His message never reached most of his fleet. The virus had advanced to the point where it was actively blocking certain communications while amplifying others. Ships that should have received his orders instead got tactical data suggesting they were under coordinated attack from multiple directions. The Etherian 3rd Squadron opened fire on the Korth Heavy Division, believing the blocky ships were preparing to attack them. The Silicon Lords responded by targeting Hive collective swarms that their sensors showed as incoming threats. Within minutes, the alien fleet was engaged in a massive, friendly fire incident that dwarfed anything the human ramming attacks had accomplished. Captain Morrison drifted in his escape pod, watching the chaos unfold through his small viewport. The alien fleet was tearing itself apart with the same devastating efficiency it had once used to conquer worlds. Ships that had worked together for centuries now fired on each other with lethal precision. "This is incredible," came a voice over the emergency communication channel. It was Captain Torres, who had also escaped her ship's final attack. "They're destroying more of their own ships than we ever could have." Morrison counted the explosions blooming across space as alien vessels continued their fratricidal battle. The virus had achieved something beyond their wildest hopes. It hadn't just disrupted the enemy fleet, it had turned their greatest strength into their ultimate weakness. Admiral Kethvar watched his mighty coalition destroy itself, and finally understood what he was truly fighting. The humans hadn't just developed a computer virus. They had created a weapon that exploited the fundamental nature of logical, hierarchical species. The virus worked because it turned the aliens' reliance on technology and coordination against them. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from multiple human installations," reported Vextar, though his voice carried no triumph. Surrender? Kethvar looked at the tactical display showing his fleet's condition. Of the 32,000 ships that had entered the solar system, fewer than 8,000 remained operational. Most of those were scattered, confused, and no longer capable of coordinated action. From their Luna command facility, they're offering to help us restore our fleet's communication systems in exchange for a ceasefire. Kethvar studied the offer with bitter understanding. The humans were offering to help repair the damage they had caused, but only after demonstrating that they could destroy any force sent against them. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. "What are our casualties?" Kethvar asked quietly. "Over 24,000 ships destroyed or disabled. Estimated crew losses exceed 40 million. Most losses were due to friendly fire incidents caused by the virus." The Admiral looked out at the debris field that had once been the greatest military force in galactic history. The humans had taken his 100-to-1 advantage and turned it into their own weapon. They had proven that some species couldn't be conquered through superior numbers or technology alone. "Open a channel to Admiral Parker," Kethvar ordered. Parker's face appeared on his screen, showing a woman who looked as exhausted as he felt. Behind her, the Luna Command Center showed signs of desperate preparation for a siege that would no longer be necessary. "Admiral Kethvar," Parker said simply, "are you ready to discuss terms?" Kethvar considered his response carefully. In 3,000 years of conquest, he had never been in this position. His species had always been the ones dictating surrender, terms to defeated enemies. "What do you want?" he asked. "Leave our solar system. Spread the word throughout the galaxy that humanity is not to be disturbed. In return, we'll help you restore your ship's communication systems and provide safe passage to the edge of our territory." It was a generous offer from a species that had every right to demand complete surrender. Kethvar realized that the humans weren't trying to conquer or dominate their enemies. They simply wanted to be left alone. "And if we refuse?" Parker's expression didn't change, but her next words chilled Kethvar to his core. "Then Dr. Hayes will release the final version of his virus. The one that doesn't just corrupt your systems, but completely destroys them. You'll be stranded in our solar system forever, with no way to call for help or repair your ships." Kethvar understood that this wasn't a bluff. The humans had already demonstrated their willingness to sacrifice everything to achieve their goals. They would gladly destroy his remaining ships if that's what it took to secure their freedom. "I accept your terms," Kethvar said quietly.